best ways to get a target on your back is to go rogue, thinking that you are going to take on management by yourself. I don't advise it. There's a reason you come together with your coworkers.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Jordan Peterson on Facebook a couple of weeks ago gave some advice to young people who want a raise. And so that's basically that's basically the whole thing that's our shtick, right? Is we're trying to help people get a raise. That's like the whole thing is we want we hope to make your job better by educating you about how other people are doing it by coming together, collective bargaining, unions, all this good stuff. And so this is like kind of our shtick. And so we wanted to, I thought it would be interesting to see what his, let's see what his idea is. And you know what? Now that I just thought about this, what I should have done is gotten like a text-to-speech thing in Jordan Peterson's voice. I think that they have those in some AI things, and I should have put all this into his voice so he could play it. But I didn't, so I'm going to have to read it. And I'm not going to attempt to do an impression. So apologies for that. But so here he says, he opens it up with how to negotiate a raise. This is Jordan Peterson. If you want a raise, it will take a lot of courage to step into the office of your boss and say, I want a raise. If they say, we do not have any extra money at the time, and if you accept that and then leave, that is not a good negotiation. And now, up to this point, I'll say that these are all true. I think it does take a lot of courage to individually do this, ask a boss for a raise. Not necessarily the smartest thing to do, but, takes a lot of courage. And then also, if you just accept what the boss says at face value, not a good negotiation. Also, not a good negotiation if you don't have your coworkers backing you up, right? These are all. So here we go. So, I don't know. We're in agreement so far, right?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Well, I agree with you. Obviously, it's always ideal to be negotiating for a raise collectively. Because that's where your strength comes from. But there are times where perhaps, it's appropriate for you as an individual. Either you're the type of workplace you're in, or the type of work you're doing, or whatever the situation may be. Or, maybe you were owed a raise that you didn't get. In which case, there might be a little separate conversation where you would hopefully have your union rep.
Yeah. If you want something, the first thing you have to do is set up options for yourself. Decide whether or not you deserve to have a raise.
Okay, I'm a timeout there. Decide whether or not you deserve a raise. Okay.
Right.
That's interesting. I suppose he wants you to think on whether or not you've earned it. Is that it?
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
I would say, given that wages have been essentially flat for 50 years in this country, that pretty much everybody who works for somebody else is due a raise. But hey, maybe there's someone out there who legitimately doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, maybe like the boss. But the bosses don't have to ask for raises; they just give it to themselves, right? And so that's part of the nonsense of our economic system. So decide whether or not you deserve to have a raise. You cannot just ask for one. You have to make a case for it. And now this is, this is what negotiations are. There is a certain amount of making a case for a raise, right? And
sure. And
and part of that in a union context is actually taking a look at the company's books, because in a union collective bargaining environment, if you're in negotiations and the company says we don't have the money,
you can say, prove it.
Prove it. Right? You can have an information request, and they legally have to say, if that's their rationale, we don't have money, they've got to show you the books. And so here in this case, in a union environment, when you're collectively bargaining, actually, you do need to make a case for why you deserve a raise, but also your boss has to make a case for why you don't deserve a raise, right? Which is not the case if you're bargaining individually.
Correct.
So those are some important things to think about. You cannot just ask for a raise, you have to make a case for one. How do you know if you're in a position to ask for a raise? Part of it is that you have other options. Put your CV or your resume in order, make it tight, and then look around to see what other employment options you have. Options that you would, in fact, take, and see what your market value is. Then decide how much of a raise you want and why it would be in your boss's best interest to offer you it.
Well, I would say though, I do take issue with saying, see what your market value is, because I think that's sort of that's just kind of bullshit. That's not necessarily a true reflection, right? Your employment options in any given situation at any given date does not necessarily mean that's your market value. And subsequent to that, I don't really care about a market value. I think people have value inherently, but I get his point, and I don't disagree there. That if you're in a situation where you're looking for a raise, you ought to be looking to see what other options are out there for a lot of reasons. For one, you may find something better, but also for the research aspect to it, kind of going, and this is something else that unions will do as well, is research comparable industries, right? When I was on the bargaining team of my staff union, one of the main things we would do in our initial research was to look at, okay, well, what are similar employees and other state affiliates being paid, right? We're all doing roughly the same kind of work. So what's Georgia doing? What's Mississippi, Tennessee, etc.?
Right.
It's the same concept. And so I don't disagree there necessarily on that part of it. How do you know if you're in a position to ask for a raise?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, and I do think that goes beyond just what are your options in terms in the market. How are you in a position to ask for a raise speaks to deeper issues inside the workplace. Like, do you have a management structure that is conducive to you even asking for such a thing? Right? Do you even have the opportunity to speak to a literal person with such authority? Because that is an increasing trend in workplaces, is that you as a worker don't actually get to interact face-to-face ever with someone who actually has the authority to give you something as significant as a pay raise. And now we're seeing folks who are even being fired via apps and text messages.
Right.
And automated emails and things of that
like
nature.
this whole thing, the whole advice, and just spoiler, is basic. It's all premised on this individualism kind of thing that he's known for, right?
Right, and that's what I take issue with.
In so many instances, so many people, like, this just doesn't, like, so many employment situations, this just doesn't apply to, like Uber. What are you going to do if you're an Uber driver? What are you going to do if you're an Amazon worker? You know,
call
all
up
these
Bezos and
I mean, it just does not. It doesn't compute in so many. In so many instances. This is just like it's just nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of it is just is decent enough advice from that individual position,
right?
As long as you understand the context that it's not going to apply in a lot of situations and to a lot of people. Yeah. So it's fine. If you're teaching a personal finance class to some high schoolers or college kids or something, and you want to pass along some of this advice. So far, what he shared isn't terribly controversial. It's just missing some key ingredients.
And I'll tell a story at the end of this of when I did a lot of this. I did a lot of this when I was working in a restaurant, and I got a raise. And so I'll tell that story at the end of this, but some issues with that. You need to have options, and you have to negotiate from a position of strength.
Correct.
Also, Also, you have to know what you want. Then you have to develop strategies for communicating what it is that you're asking for, and you have to be forthright about that. You have to think through the reasons, because otherwise you will not have enough courage to tolerate the conflict that it might entail to withstand the negotiation. Here, very good thing. I mean, this is great. And this, and there's just a bit here of like power analysis. Because here he's not even necessarily talking about market value. This is a power analysis. A very, a kind of confused one maybe. But negotiating from a position of strength, developing strategies, tolerating conflict, negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, that's all fair enough.
Yeah, this is all good. And this is all things that...
Nothing groundbreaking.
Nothing groundbreaking, but this is something that a bargaining committee would do in a collective bargaining environment. If you think you're an agreeable type, one way of fortifying yourself is to understand how much misery and conflict you may be storing up for yourself in the future if you refuse to engage in reasonable negotiation on your own behalf in the present. And this is exactly one of the things that we talk to people that union organizers tell people when they're considering organizing, because that is a lot of conflict, especially in a place like Starbucks where, the company is just engaging in a scorched earth anti-union campaign. But the thing to think about is how much conflict, how much, in his words, misery are you storing up for yourself in the future if Starbucks workers don't organize on a national scale and don't gain a big market share and don't get, pool for themselves a lot of power, right? And that's the important thing is that, all of this stuff is well and good in an individual setting, and it's fine. And this is not bad advice per se, but it really, really misses, I think, a key thing about workplaces and compensation, and it's about power. A lot of times, it's about much more about power than it is about market value, right? Because what does that even mean, market value? And we can show the lie here when we just compare Amazon drivers to UPS drivers. What is the market value of a UPS driver? The market value of a UPS driver is not, they're doing the same thing, more or less, as an Amazon driver. Basically the same thing. I'm sure that the union has set up some more training, and there's some more, I'm sure that there's got to be some more specialization because the union has been there so long and they've grown with the company and all this. But the basic thing... At the end of the day,
they're delivering packages.
At the end of the day, they're delivering packages.
Vehicles.
And yet their compensation package is more than double what Amazon workers make. I remember talking to an Amazon worker, and who was not a delivery driver, but a factory worker. And so I asked her how much she thought that, or how much, I asked her how much the Amazon delivery drivers made, and she said, I don't know, like $16, $17 an hour. And so I asked her how much the unionized UPS drivers made, and she said, I don't know, maybe $18, $19, maybe $20 an hour. And so I told her, I said, try $35 to $40 an hour after you've topped out, after you've been there on your progression for like 4 years, I think. Whereas an Amazon driver has no, maybe an Amazon driver after 4 years, instead of making 16, is maybe making 20, 21, maybe. I don't know, right? But it's not 40. It's definitely not 40. And that's what Teamster drivers are making, plus healthcare, plus retirement, plus, all this other stuff, right? And so how did they get that? They got it because they pooled they collectively bargained. It was a power thing. It's not a value thing. It's not that these people individually are any more powerful or any more valuable. It's that they have more power.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is that I don't really think there is such a thing as like this objective market value that like somehow we can find and be like, yep, that's the answer. It's constantly in flux, and it is a synthesis of contradictions of power, and power dynamics and how that plays out in the marketplace. So, right, you have folks who are delivering packages via trucks, doing more or less the same work, drastically different results in terms of compensation and benefits and working conditions. That's a result of those contradictions playing out and the power dynamics at play there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see that there is that objective, market value, quote unquote, that, you could peg to someone. It's all in flux. It's all a fluid dynamic. So I think that is another area where it kind of misses the mark. So, and it is very individualized, and while that's how we're kind of expected to behave and expected to think, and I get all that, but the economy is a social mechanism, right? It's all social. We have a society. I mean, I don't know.
We live in a society.
Right.
Yeah.
We live in a society. I don't know how to dress it up much more than that beyond we live in a society. You are not just one atomized individual operating in the marketplace. We are all dependent on everybody else to make this economy go and to make this economy work. And it's just a matter of who has the power in that situation and who doesn't. And that's the rub.
Yeah. Well, and so the thing is, so, I mentioned the story, and I did a lot of this when I asked for a raise when I worked at the restaurant that I worked at. And so I was a server, or I did all of the jobs. I worked in the back and I served, and I, did managing shifts, and which, didn't give me any hiring or firing power, but, they called me a manager so that I could, order the groceries and lock up at night. Right. But,
right.
And so I asked for a raise. I had been there for 2 years. And so I said, I was like, all right, look, I'm a really valuable employee, blah, blah. Here's all the reasons that I'm a good employee. You should give me $3 an hour instead of $2 an hour when I'm serving.
Got to know your worth.
Yeah, I got to know my worth. And so they did, and that was helpful enough, but it was fine. It was a little bit more on, instead of my paychecks being like $12 every 2 weeks, they were like $50 every 2 weeks. And so, I don't know, that's a tank of gas, and that's not anything to sniff at. But like, what happened is that, and I just wasn't thinking communally, because the rest of the servers, none of them got a raise. And also, by the time I had been working there like 3 or 3.5 years or something, I hadn't gotten another raise. And that's one of the things. And also, I was only one person. I could have gotten more, and everybody could have gotten more if we had come together, right? And so that, that's another thing, is that it really leaves out other people who deserve help too. Instead of just thinking about yourself and being selfish, it's worth thinking about like how you, if you're a type of person who is outgoing and who's a really valuable employee, then maybe you should think about using that, to help other folks that you work with. That's something that would be worth thinking about, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think if you have that capacity, if you're a natural leader in the workplace, see how you can parlay that into collective gains.
Yeah.
And I did want to mention, we got a lot going on in the chat. One of the issues that Jose mentioned was the way part-timers are being treated. We were using UPS and Amazon kind of an example there, but that's not to dismiss very real issues happening in UPS.
Right.
And that's exactly right with the part-timers and the way they are treated. And we've seen that in other industries, unfortunately in unionized industries, this trend of bringing in part-timers and temporary help, and of course 2 tiers in some industries now. It's a problem. There's a race to the bottom. There is a race to the bottom. So there we go. You talk about market value. Well, the capitalists, the folks who have the capital, the folks who employ us, are racing to the bottom and competing amongst each other to drive down the market value, quote unquote, of labor. So, Teamsters have been able to have more success through UPS, though clearly not enough.
Right.
But, in Amazon, it's even worse, where they're lacking representation and they're lacking that collective voice. We're thankful to the unions who are fighting to bring that. RWDSU, of course, here in Alabama, the Amazon Labor Union up in New York. But it's time for changes in industry after industry, especially the logistics and delivery industries. I mean, the pandemic, I think, really exposed some things there. How dependent we were on these workers, how overworked so many of these workers are, and that's across the board, right? UPS, Amazon, FedEx, DHL, USPS. There are just so many folks who are being overworked in this industry, and it's time for that to change. But you know what? I don't think if you just took the Jordan Peterson approach and walked into your boss's office and said, you know what? I think they're forcing too many deliveries per hour on us.
Right.
We should probably rethink that. Here's me making a case for changing that.
Yeah.
Let me know how that goes.
Yeah. But also probably just don't do that.
Yeah, probably wise not to do that unless you want to have a target on your back.
Right.
And that's one of the best ways to get a target on your back is to go off, rogue by yourself, thinking that you are going to, transform all these issues and transform the workplace, and you're going to take on management by yourself. And, as much as I love to see the fighting spirit, I've been there, done that, and I don't advise it.
Yeah.
I don't advise it. There's a reason you come together with your coworkers.
Yeah, there was and I'm going to have Joe stitch this into the clip, but there was a great TikTok that AFSCME put out, their national, on their TikTok page.
Hi, I'm in a union.
And I'm not in a union.
That's a nice arrangement. Who's it for?
It's for my boss. I'm asking for a raise.
Ooh, buttering him up?
Well, we all do it, right?
Oh, I don't have to. We negotiate our pay scales as a union, and my scheduled raise just kicked in.
Oh, I see. Honeydew?
Thank you.
So it's a great TikTok.
Yeah. I would much rather rely on the power of collective bargaining and the threat of withholding our labor than the buttering up with edible arrangements and the such like that.
Yes.
No offense to folks who do that. Hey, if you have a boss that you like and you want to send them flowers or something.
Yeah, I mean, we got to do what we got to do. No
right.
Judgment.
We all got to survive.
Maybe there's a better way.
If that's what helps you survive and
yep.
Keep your nose clean and stay out of trouble, I get it. But it's no substitute for collective power.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.